Thanks for listening to the Drummers Weekly Groovecast. You can contact the show at twitter.com/DW Groovecast and through Facebook at facebook.com/Drummers Weekly Groovecast.
Good evening.
I am warning you right now, if you touch my drums, I will stab you in the neck with a knife.
Ain't a bucket. Ain't a bucket.
Mom! Take it easy. Lower it.
I'm not gonna lower it. I have to do this now.
I don't mind you playing it, but lower it.
Everything get straightened out?
Oh, we had a problem. I mean, we tried to do everything we could.
What do you mean?
Well, you know what I mean.
Next.
Little trouble there. You're rushing.
Yeah, well, you know, that's just like your opinion, man.
Yeah.
Mike Johnston and I share the same spirit animal. Yeah, I'll just let that sit there for a little while. I got really California on you guys there for a minute. That's where Mike Johnston lives. He's out in the Sacramento area. What an honor and what a blast it was to have him on the show today. Mike is just a tremendous communicator and a wonderful teacher, and that is going to show up in spades when you listen to this show today. It was absolutely one of my favorite conversations that I've had. It was a real teacher-to-teacher kind of a show. You'll find that out of this hour and a half that I spent with Mike, probably an hour and 15 minutes is straight pedagogical talk, which is very different from almost all of our other interviews we do. We spend the majority of our time talking about performances and past players that they played with, but a lot of nuts and bolts in this one, and I just geeked out. I think he did too. We had a really good time talking about teaching and business and just how to put together a successful online business that features drumming and the stuff that we love. And while we're talking about business, let me go ahead and say this. Mike is a busy, busy guy. Let me give you a little illustration of how busy this guy is. The origin of this show really came together about 6 weeks ago. And so I reached out to him, and he shot over a handful of dates. And it was one of those things where we took our mutual calendars, put them back to back, and looked up at a light and found a little tiny sliver in November to be able to do this show. But we got it in there, and it was well worth the wait. I think you guys are really, really going to like it. And also, let me go ahead and say this before we jump straight into the show, is that this interview was facilitated by our good mutual friend, Chris Brady out at Aquarian Drumheads. If you guys recall, we had Chris on the show a few weeks ago, who was also another tremendous guest. And he suggested afterward when we were continuing to talk that, hey, you know, if there's some other folks you want to talk to and, you know, you want me to help you facilitate that thing and reach out, let's do it. We'll hook it up. And I took him up on that. I wanted to have Mike on the show for a while, and we made it happen. So big thanks for Chris. But let me say this. It does not end there. Not only did Chris Brady put this thing together, but the other thing that he did was he said, look, when you do this show with Mike, we're not just going to be satisfied with the show. You guys both play the products, so this is the perfect opportunity for you to do a contest. And we are going to do a contest featuring Aquarian Drumheads. So I'm going to keep you in suspense, make you listen to the show. When you get to the end of the show, we're going to tell you what the contest is about, what you can win, and how you can win, and when you're going to be able to win. So we're going to go ahead and get right into the interview now. And what we're going to listen to is a little bit of music from Mike's new group, Man on the Moon. He sent over a few tracks, so we're going to listen to something going into the interview, and then we're going to listen to something out of the interview. All right, onward and upward. Here is Mike Johnston.
Beautiful.
Man, I think we were right on time, brother.
Yeah. Well, okay, here's how it works is whoever does the counting in, Skype is always at the tempo that I count people in. Skype is always 1/8 note off. So you would hear it like we're right on, but I hear it as clack, click, and it's awesome. So if you heard it as right on, then we're good to go.
You know, I think that intro is probably good enough. Let me go ahead and just tell everybody who we're talking to today on the show. It is my distinct pleasure today to welcome to Groovecast Nation from Mike'sLessons.com, Mr. Mike Johnston. Mike, say hello to the good folks out in Groovecastistan.
It is awesome to be with you, man. I really appreciate this. Been listening to the podcast, and I love the banter that you guys have. And I know that your partner isn't here with us, but so our job is to spend the next hour making him jealous by how awesome this single episode is.
Mike, well said. And, you know, to kind of, if you want to pile on right now, he is going through a serious medical issue right now where he is having hemorrhoids taken off. So therefore, you know, I mean, just
that's classy.
And what did you like that I used pile on top of that?
I think that's taking your stuff to the next level, and I think it's important for him to know that I have a special deal with Gretsch that anyone that interviews me gets a free Gretsch broadcaster in their finish of their choosing. And so I had Gretsch was all ready to give away 2, but now they only have to give you 1. So that's fantastic.
You know, Mike, that is one of those. Let's say that's just one of the little fringe benefits of being on the show with you. How's that? How's that?
You know what? I think it's great. And the fact that I got to experience my first time hearing the word hemorrhoid in a podcast interview, I really feel like I think we've kind of accomplished something here. So thanks for having me on, and I'll see you next time.
Oh, well, you know, I now feel like that we are podcast soulmates.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah, man.
Well, you know, one quick thing about the broadcaster thing. Does Paul Cooper know that that you've offered that?
No, he does not. I just keep telling him, I'm like, it's not quite the right color. That's not the right natural maple that I was looking for. So send me 2 more.
Oh,
so yeah.
I know that he loves hearing that sort of thing. But anyway, Mike, thanks again for being on the show.
Yeah, man.
But before we start diving into the questions and stuff, I want to throw out my disclaimer that I always throw out on all of our interviews, and that is, good folks of Groovecast Nation, just realize that we like to do things a little bit differently here. So we're not going to go through and do a whole ton of bio and talk a whole lot about Mike's playing career. Instead, we're going to do something a little bit different today. We're going to talk a whole lot about Mike'sLessons.com, and we're going to talk a lot about teaching and concepts of teaching and that sort of stuff. So with all that in mind, if you do want to get a little bit more bio on Mike, and if you do want to find out some things about his playing career, feel free to reference any of his interviews that he's done either in Modern Drummer or perhaps in some other podcast interviews that he's done. Now, we are going to talk a little bit of bio for context and whatnot, but after a few minutes, we're going to really dive into the lesson stuff. So there's that.
That's good.
Right up front. So, Mike, first, talking about the bio just for a second. You were rather young, I understand, when you first started playing. When did it get to a point when you decided, you know, I need to start taking some lessons and study formally?
Well, lessons was actually how I started playing drums. I got thrown into the drums through school music. I was trying to play clarinet. I was so bad at it that they moved me back to the drums. And then immediately my dad, who had just gotten a divorce from my mom, they had just split up and I was living with my mom. He was like, drums? That's perfect to put in mom's living room to drive her crazy. So he supported it that way. She supported it through saying, okay, if you're going to do that, then I'm going to actually support this thing and get the kid lessons. So I was in lessons by the time that I was 5 years old, but I was always the worst student of my teacher as far as the learning. So I practiced as much, if not more than everyone, and none of it stuck. I was always third chair in school or fourth chair. A day at school where I actually got to use sticks instead of hit the triangle or be on gong at the end of Carmina Burana and hit it twice. That was a great day because it just didn't click. And then I would say around when you're 5 to like maybe 11, you don't know what sucking is. You don't really care that you're bad at something because you just do it to do it. But then around 11, 12, 13, you start noticing everyone's way better than me at this. And then you ask somebody like, oh, have you been playing for 7 years like I have when I was 12? And they're like, no, I started a couple months ago. And I'm like, how is that possible? How are you so good? And so I would say, as far as taking it seriously and searching out teachers that weren't just the local music store teachers, it probably happened around 16 was the first time I said, okay, instead of signing up for drum lessons at the local shop and getting who I get, I'm actually going to try to find someone in town that is the direct representation of what I want to be as a drummer, and I'm going to ask them if they will teach me, whether they're a teacher or not. And so from like 16 till about 22, my teacher in town was somebody who had never taught before, but he was Will Kennedy from Sacramento, and he was a huge Will Kennedy fan. He wasn't Will Kennedy, and that's who I study with now, but he was like Will Kennedy, and so I just said, look, man, if you can even play the same thing twice in a row, I can teach. I've been taking lessons my whole life. I can teach myself, but I've never been around anybody that plays like this. So anyway, so I would say I got really serious about the drums around 16 or so. And then probably around 19 is when I actually started making that thing in your head where you actually start referring to yourself as a drummer. Because for the first 14 years of drums, I did not feel like a drummer. I was the worst one in band. I actually had to transfer high schools. I went to a high school that had Johnny Rabb in it. And so he was a senior when I was a freshman, and I just knew right away I'm never going to get to play in jazz band. And the other drummers underneath Johnny, Tim Metz is like a local legend around here, and I was like, these guys are so much better than me. So I actually transferred high schools just to go to a worse music program so that I could at least play drums. Because I was like, I wish I would have just stayed and sat under Johnny Rabb and watched him and grow from that. But I wanted to play drums. So yeah, so it's been a weird journey for sure.
Mike, who did you study with that maybe got you hip to, we'll call it like the Bibles of traditional methods, things like syncopation, stick control, Chapin's book, that sort of thing? Who is somebody that maybe influenced you in that way?
I would say that would be Pete Magadini. So I started studying with Pete when I was a little bit later in life, like 22. And that's when, and I was already touring, already had a record deal and everything at that time. And he could tell that I put a lot of time into that rock chop world. And I had also been teaching, so I was very familiar with all of the future sound stuff. But he was the first one that opened my eyes to how the rabbit hole that syncopation is, And he said, okay, I just need you to do this. You're going to do a jazz samba, and then you're going to play this summary number 1 with your left hand. And I was like, wait a minute, that boring page could be that cool and take that much work? I mean, I did that page when I was 9 years old and flew through it because it's just quarter notes and eighth note rests and quarter note rests. But then as soon as it became this thing where it was a melody with my left hand between snare, rack, and floor while keeping a 3-voice ostinato, I was like, oh my gosh. And so Pete opened up my whole world to that. I feel like I've always been pretty late to the party when it comes to drums, because I would always try to show my friends this stuff, like, check this out. And they're like, dude, I've been doing that since I was 8. Who was your drum? And I'm like, wait, who was my drum teacher? What was he teaching me? He just, my teachers told me, like, hey, get Carmine Apice's book, Realistic Rock, and when we get to the end, then you're a professional drummer. I'm like, well, okay. So Pete Magadini was the first one that opened my eyes to that whole world.
Gotcha. Well, now, even though you say you were maybe a little bit late to the party on some of this stuff, you are still obvious a very serious student of the instrument. Did you ever consider when you were in high school to go to college to be a music major anywhere? Yeah,
definitely. So that was my goal. Was right around senior year, I started thinking, okay, I'm not good enough to become a professional, but I definitely really am starting to like this. Like I said, I'm starting to identify myself as a drummer, and I was in a rock band, like my first band where we had gigs and stuff. And I thought, I want to go to Berkeley. And then what happened was I got a teaching gig when I was 18. I was working at a local music store called Drum Guitar City, and our main teacher got fired, and they dumped 65 students on me in one day. So that was like my first time ever teaching. I was 18 or 17 and a half when that happened. And so when that happened, it kind of paused my my college thing, because all of a sudden I had like an actual job with a real income where I was like, wait a minute, this is why people go to college, just so they can have 65 students and then gig at night. I was like, this is great. And then what happened was my band that was just made up of some buddies, we got a major label record deal with Hollywood Records. And I asked my dad, hey, like, I want to go to Berkeley or maybe William Patterson. That's where my buddy Tim had gone, and he was telling me about, he's there with Mark Juliana, and it's like such a great place to grow. And so my dad just said, look, you can go to college whenever you want, but this is such a luck and timing thing that you have right now. Like, it takes so much luck and so much timing to have a rock band get a major label record deal out of Sacramento, California. He's like, take this now, and then you can do whatever you want. So the first thing I did when we got on tour was our first U.S. tour. We came through Boston. I went straight to the Berklee School of Music bookstore, and I bought their entire curriculum for the year, and I just went to Berkeley on the bus.
Nice, man. So, Mike, being in the band, let me go ahead and use this for context also. The band was Simon Says, correct?
Uh-huh. Yep.
Okay. Now, you did that for a period of years. Tell us how did all bands end in different ways? Some acrimoniously, some of them are just one of these things where it kind of fizzles out and everybody goes a different way. Sometimes they're actually broken up by the industry itself. Right. How did this thing end for you?
Unfortunately, I mean, it was probably one of the biggest life lessons because it ended terribly and it was all my doing as far as my exit from the band. So since I grew up in school music and jazz bands, and I started gigging when I was really young, even though I was a bad drummer, I still had like a charisma to my drumming that allowed, even at 12, people were hiring me to do cover gigs and stuff. And I could play the basics. I just wasn't an advanced drummer. So since I grew up in the gigging environment, even though we were brothers and we were a touring band, I kind of saw it as a gig. So when it came time that I wasn't in love with it anymore and I was obsessing over teaching and it was all I ever thought about, even when we were on stage, I kind of thought, okay, well, I've put in more time to this gig than any gig in my life. I've given you guys like 8 years. We're good. So I'm just going to go ahead and quit and go teach. And the band, as a typical rock band would, they were like, you don't quit the brotherhood. Like we still have another album on our major label deal. We get a big advance. We get a bunch of money. We go. I think our recording budget was like $260,000 for our third album. And so it's like, that's just to record the album. And then you get your bonuses and your publishing deal. And I just kind of thought, yeah, but I'm not happy. So I'm going to go ahead and bounce. And it went terribly wrong, but it was because I didn't understand really the difference between a gigging drummer and then being in a band, where it's like, hey, you can't just be here for the record deal and the good times and the bonuses. Like, you got to be here. You got to stick this out. So anyways, I flew home, quit the band while we were on tour. I did do my job as far as I got them 3 or 4 different auditions, or 3 or 4 different drummers that could audition for the band, that could do all the tours. So I wasn't leaving them high and dry at all. But I just kind of went back. Actually, at the time, I went to San Luis Obispo and started teaching at a place called the Drum Circuit. And to this day, I quit when I was 26. So it's been 15 years. I haven't heard from the guitar player since. And we were like, brothers. So I learned a huge lesson. And so now I'm much more upfront with anybody that I play with. Like, hey, here's my life situation. Here's everything. Here's what you can expect out of me and what you can't expect out of me, because I don't ever want that to happen again.
Certainly. Well, with all of the, we'll call it tragedy that came out of that, naturally now it has morphed itself into something excellent for your career. And so I want to go ahead and go ahead and start segueing into the teaching aspect of things.
Yeah.
Mike, when did you realize that you had a gift for communication?
It definitely wasn't until the internet started, until YouTube. So I started on YouTube in like 2005, 2006. It was before they had been bought by Google or acquired by Google. So it was, to me, YouTube was like Dropbox. It was just a place that I could put videos for free. They would host my videos. I was like, man, hosting back then was so expensive. There wasn't even the term gigabyte at the time. You were buying megs to host. So I was like, this place will host my videos for free. This is great. And then to have this huge outpouring of followers show up and say, I've been taught that subject 20 times. I've never understood it until you taught it. in my mind, I was like, what are you talking about? Like that, how else could you teach time signatures? That's the easiest way to understand them. And how could you teach dotted notes? That's the easiest way to understand it. So anyways, so that was when I started thinking, okay, that's kind of weird. And then simultaneously, while that was happening, Pete Magadini, my teacher, he himself and Roy Burns from Aquarian, they both at different times just kind of said, look, you look happy when you play, but there's nothing like the way you look when you teach. You light up in a whole different way. You start shaking with excitement. You really should consider doing this for your living. Like, and that they were the first people to give me the freedom to say, okay, teaching could be my plan A instead of my fallback plan. Because as a young 20-something drummer, I'm like, I have a record deal. This is why you practice so hard. Why isn't it making me happy? You know? And then when I would teach, even if I was getting $15 per half hour, man, I was in heaven. So both Roy and then YouTube and Pete Magadini all at the same time saying, man, you have a gift for explaining things to other people. You got to do this. You know, I'd say the biggest hurdle, to be honest, was, okay, I can explain things to people, but I can't explain it to a camera. Because now we're going from private drum lessons to talking to a lens, which was really hard for me to do in the beginning.
One quick question for you about the teachers that you've had. One thing that is apparent to me is that most really good teachers have got what I call like their teacher hall of fame, or like their teacher's Mount Rushmore. I know, man, I got to study with Roy some as well. I got to study with Ed Soph. Those guys are master communicators, master teachers. My teacher that I had up at the University of Tennessee, Keith Brown, another mentor of mine and also a protege of Ed Soph as well. Those guys are my template. They are my Mount Rushmore of teachers. Who is on that Mount Rushmore of teachers for you?
Oh man, that's such a great question. I would say, shockingly, it's not a drummer thing, because I never really wanted to take influence from drumming, because I knew it'd be too easy for me to steal or plagiarize without even knowing that I did it. And I couldn't keep track of all the, if I'm going to teach Swiss triplets, do I have to give credit to Switzerland? Like, I don't know, like, how many credits do I have to give, I remember one time teaching the Bluzda, and people lost their mind when I mentioned, like, oh, I got this from Todd Zuckerman, and they were like, Tony Williams, Joel Rosenblatt, like they went through the whole list, and I was like, okay, but I didn't get it from them. Like, I'm telling you where I got it from. I'm not saying who invented it, It's a flam, it's a diddle, it's a tap. I'm sure it was done in 1803. Somebody tapped that on their legs. So I really got my teaching, Mount Rushmore would be Brian Cox. He's an astrophysicist that does a lot of the BBC stuff on space and science and physics. Brian Greene, who's another astrophysicist and string theorist. He's probably my favorite. So Brian Greene, I remember watching a TED Talk where it said Brian Greene, string theory. And I was like, okay, knowing what I know about TED Talks, they're about 15 minutes long. How the heck is this dude going to explain string theory in 15 minutes? Something that maybe 9 people in the world understand. And he's going to drop the heat on this. So I just remember watching him walk out on stage so confident without being cocky. He just walked out like, I've got this. And then he dumbed it down in the most beautiful way, to the point that everyone in the room by the end was like, I think I get it. And he had great visualizations, visual aids. He had great analogies, great comparisons. And I just thought, if he can do that with string theory, I can do that with syncopated grooves. I can do that with funk, with rock. And so I would say he's like at the top for me. Brian Greene, Brian Cox. And then as far as drumming, I just can't imagine that spending all that time with Pete Magadini didn't rub off on me, And I still find myself teaching life lessons and drum lessons, and then at the end of it, I go, yeah, I feel really proud right now, but I didn't come up with that. Like, I remember that's what Pete did to me, Pete had this, I remember one time Pete Magadini lives about 2 hours from me. He's in the Bay Area. I'm in Sacramento, California. So as a 21-year-old kid, 22-year-old kid, I had to drive my car that, one, I was just hoping it would get to the Bay Area without breaking down. Cost me $30 in gas to get there, $30 in gas to get back. So I go to my lesson, and I've been taking lessons with him for about a year at this point. I walk in, and he's like, all right, so here's what we did last time. Can you show it to me real quick? And I said, honestly, man, with the recording new demos, I gave him all these excuses. I'm like, I really haven't worked on it. And he's like, no problem at all. Just leave the check on my front table and I'll see you next time. And so it was about a 2-minute lesson. I got back, I put the check on the table, which was, I think it was like $80 at the time, which was $1,000 to me. And I drove all the way home thinking, wow. And then he just was very kind and said, look, I'm not going to teach you that same thing twice. You don't have a problem of not understanding it. You didn't practice it. And we're not moving forward until you get that done, because I'm teaching you in a linear way that I can't teach you what's next till you can do that. And it was just, my thought was like, well, just teach me something else that's really cool for $100 or for $80. And he taught me in that moment, no, I have a plan for you and I can't teach you what's next until you get this down. So now, even when I teach private lessons, now that I'm not doing like the weekly schedule type private lessons, if somebody comes in for a private lesson, I let them know, don't contact me until this is done. If it's tomorrow, that's great. Let's do another lesson tomorrow. But if it's 6 months, it's okay that it's 6 months. You have a busy life, So I learned a lot of life lessons from Pete. So my Mount Rushmore would be Pete Magadini, definitely Brian Green, and Brian Cox.
Awesome. Now, let's go ahead and move into Mike'sLessons.com.
Okay.
When you had the first thought about doing this,
mm-hmm.
what kind of trepidations did you have? How many different ways did you try to talk yourself out of doing this before you just went ahead and went, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and take the plunge.
Well, the good thing was there was nothing to compare myself to, because it wasn't being done yet. So I didn't have to think, well, I have to hit these numbers and I have to make this much money and it has to do this. It was more like people asking for more YouTube content. And I just kind of felt like, I value education. I value the time it takes me to make these videos and to deliver this information for you. So I feel comfortable charging for it. And luckily, right at that same time, Apple had just released iTunes and the iPhone was coming out. And so all of a sudden there was this thing where now, instead of buying an album for $13, I was buying a song for 99 cents. And I just thought, wow, man, like I wish we could do that for drums, because, I got Horacio Hernandez's DVD and I wish I could have just bought the first 5 minutes, because that took me a year to get down. Mm-hmm. I didn't need the $50 DVD that's 4 hours long, Same with Thomas Lang's first double disc, Creative Control, I think it might be. But I remember just thinking, man, I wish I could have just bought chapter 1 for $4. And then when I was ready, I could have bought the next one. So I just thought, what if I started breaking up lessons into little bite-sized chunks? So I wasn't trepidatious about starting a business, because I already had my own business. As far as I owned a drum school, I was really trepidatious about the fact that I couldn't afford a web developer. Mm-hmm. I told a web developer, hey, here's what I'm looking for. Here's what I want to do. And I was thinking, okay, so maybe this is $300 or $400. And they came back with a quote of like 20 grand. And I was like, what are you talking about? So I just found a website called lynda.com, lynda.com. And I learned web development, graphic design, video editing, audio engineering. I just took every course I could on all that stuff. I learned how to code. At the time, Flash was really big, so I had to learn ActionScript. And I just built, the first 3 versions of Mike'sLessons.com I built by myself.
Well, so. Mike, was that like around 2006, 2007,
mm-hmm.
somewhere in that ballpark?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
yep.
Once you got Mike'sLessons.com formally up and going,
mm-hmm.
what was the very first video you posted?
Oh, boy. Goodness gracious. I would assume it probably would have been something like some sort of candy, like linear crossover 30-second note fill. Please don't leave. Buy this for 99 cents. So I would assume I went in like a full-blown crack dealer. Like, all right, everybody, here's a little bit, here's a taste. So yeah, I would assume it was that. And then really, I learned a big lesson on that too. I was so fill and chop dominated out of fear that people wouldn't like the content. And then I started meeting those drummers in person, and all they could do was play chops and fills, and they weren't musicians, they weren't drummers. And I was like, oh my gosh, did I do this to you? Like, I assumed you were buying my stuff as side content while you were taking private drum lessons. I didn't know there were people out there that didn't have access to drum lessons, so I was their drum lessons. And I had turned these people into like YouTube chop fests, and I was like, oh, well, this isn't good. So then I really cracked down on like legitimate education a few years later.
Excellent. Now, how did you go about acquiring students for the website?
Great
because
question.
I mean, at first you naturally just had an organic kind of thing where it was sort of like by YouTube word of mouth, so to speak. But now somewhere along the way, there has to be some sort of a marketing effort. How did you kind of figure out what you were going to do to acquire these new students?
Well, luckily, the one thing that everyone can do at home when it comes to marketing is realize that you are who everyone else is marketing to. So pay attention to what works for you. Mm-hmm. What are the things that turn you on and what are the things that turn you off? If it's 2 a.m. and I can't sleep and I'm watching TV and I see a ShamWow commercial or I see some late night TV commercial, that stuff makes my skin crawl. So I immediately think, okay, I don't want to ever do that to someone else. Then if I get an email from somebody and all of a sudden I find myself clicking on the link in the email and then I'm on their website and all of a sudden I put something in my cart, that's when I go, what the hell just happened? I had work to do today and somehow this one email got me all the way to the checkout process. Then I go back to that email and I look at the color scheme, I look at the way they spoke to me, I look at every single detail and try to think, okay, I need to use that because that was great. So it's really just using yourself as a customer. As far as we've never paid for advertising, if you notice that not a single video of mine on YouTube ever has an ad on it, so far you've never seen my ads on YouTube or Google AdWords because it was just like a slow growth thing that I wanted. I wanted everything to be very organic. So really what I would say the only thing that really happened that made it go from a small startup business into what it has become was just when the industry started taking my teaching seriously. So signing with Meinl was a big deal because then they pushed for me to be playing different drum festivals. They went out of their way to put me on different drum festivals. I think PASIC, I think it was 2013, was huge because I was sandwiched between Chad Smith and Dave Weckl. And I prepared for like 6 months. All I did was prepare for that moment and visualize that moment. And it was like I remember getting off stage, and as soon as I got off stage, one of the guys from Modern Drummer came up to me and said, "Do you want to be on the cover?" I was like, wait, I'm a drum teacher. You can't put me on the cover of Modern Drummer magazine. That's insane. And so once the industry got on board with what I did, that kind of validated it. And so all those people that were on the fence, I didn't have to advertise to them anymore. And the other thing is, the best advertising is when your students get better at the drums. So that's kind of was my job, was like, every day I got to find a new way to make people better so that when they play, someone else will go up to them and go, man, you sound a lot better. And then they can go, oh, cool, thanks. I've been taking lessons with Mike Johnston on Mike'sLessons.com. And then it's like, cool, now you're the business advertising that I don't have to pay for. And it's legit. I would hate to be contacting people and be like, hey, is there any way you could put a post on your Facebook page about how rad I am? Like, that would suck. So yeah, I just want it to be organic. And I mean, I'm sure we'll do advertising in the future, but even that still has to be organic because right now the biggest commodity you have in social media is trust and transparency. And so if I lose that trust through over advertising and over selling a product, I can't ever get it back. And then it's just the whole thing's ruined. So,
Mike, before I go to the next question, I want to let you know that it is not lost upon me that you threw a ShamWow reference in there. You are the first guest that has ever mentioned ShamWow. So big shout out to Vince, the spokesperson for that. One of my
yeah.
So
he should be on my Mount Rushmore of advertisers.
He should be on all of our Mount Rushmores.
Yeah.
We need one of those handy dandy, little lavalier style headset mics.
That's right, man. Nobody can sell a pan that doesn't stick for 3 days like he can.
Or the slap chop, man. He was the slap chop guy
that was
too,
no
man.
joke. Yeah, man. I mean, imagine the jealousy that went through the advertising world when they saw him just slam that thing down and dice an onion in 1 second. They were like, damn it, he does it again. First the ShamWow and now the slap chop. He's got everything.
So, Mike, now we talked about how you've kind of organically grown the students and just grown the business. Now, somewhere along the way, when you go from 10 students to 20 to 50 to 100 to a couple hundred to 1,000, you've also got to improve your own business infrastructure. Things,
Absolutely. Yeah.
everything from video production to even at the point you're at now, hiring people. How did you effectively scale your business to where you didn't overexpand, which causes a lot of companies to go under, right? Yeah. Or underexpand, and then you can't keep up with demand. How did you do that?
That's a great question. One, I really lucked out in the fact that I had such a huge fear of debt that I never took on any investment and never took a loan. So I didn't have enough liquid cash to expand fast.
I think that's a healthy fear, though, man. I think that's an excellent point. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I just, as soon as I heard back when I was, God, I don't know, maybe 20 or 22 years old, when I heard that Steve Jobs got fired from Apple, I was like, wait, I don't understand. He started it. How did he get fired from his own company? They're like, oh, the board of directors voted him out. I'm like, that can happen? I'm never having one of those. They'll vote me out in the first week. So I never wanted investment. I wanted to always do it my own way. I'm an only child. I work best alone. So that was one way that I, was able to stay away from overexpanding. I didn't have enough money to expand. If we had, I don't know, $1,000 of profit, which I remember having profit for the first time was the craziest thing ever. But having profit, I thought, okay, well, we have $1,000 to buy a new camera, not to upgrade our entire studio. We get one new camera. And now the front angle is a little bit nicer than the side angle. It's like, well, and that's how it was done. And so it was very slow. As far as growing, there were times, though, that as I would grow, I would actually lose followers at the time because they would say, oh, I knew, I'd get all new HD cameras and they'd go, oh, I knew you were going to go Hollywood on us. I'm like, wait, what? I took your money and bought gear to make your content better. How is that going Hollywood? And they just wanted, just like a local band that blows up, they want to, they're on the journey with you and they don't, and they're scared to lose you to the masses. And so that's something that I've been very conscious of is like, I still have to write a couple hundred emails a day. And I have to, right now, when you sign up on mikeslessons.com, that sounds like a commercial. Right now, when you sign up you get a free ShamWow. But right now, when you sign up for our All Access Pass, I immediately, wherever I'm at, whether I'm at the gym or on the drum set, I write you an email and say, hey, give me a time that works best for you so I can call you and let me onboard you. Let me help you navigate this site for the first time. And, if it means that it's, 3 a.m. for me because you're in Sweden, then let's do it, And so I want to always keep it super personal. I don't want to grow so fast that I can't keep that. So yeah, as far as expanding, it's really about looking at the business through the eyes of the customer because you are the customer. Like you have a podcast. You listen to podcasts. If you hear something cool in a podcast, start doing that. It's that simple, I mean, I would be listening to different bumper musics going like, yeah, that intro is way too long. Well, how long's your intro? And then I would always be treating it as like, I'm going to make the best product that I would want to buy. And I just hope that I'm normal enough that lots of other people would want that. I can only imagine what the drum lesson product that Buddy Rich would have been. It would have been horrible because he would have made the product for himself and it would have been the most hardcore, angry, like fired up thing. And he probably wouldn't have understood what it's like to struggle with double strokes at 60 BPM. So he's going to make that product, but it's like, oh man, I don't want that. I want to make sure that like I'm always connected to what it was like when I was 5 years old, struggling with paradiddles, what it was like when I was 20, the first time somebody came to me and said, hey, by the way, you're really good at the drums, but your timing is quite horrible. It was like, oh my gosh, okay, I got to lock this feeling in for the rest of my life so I can deliver it to somebody else and tell them how to get through it,
So Mike, how many people aside from yourself and your wife are working from mikeslessons.com full-time right now?
Well, none full-time and then just one. We have a developer and that's it. So yeah, so he's in San Diego. His name's Brad Phillip and he does everything. Everything's custom code. And we just work together really well. He's a great drummer. I think he did the first kit builder for SJC's site back in the day. He's done Aquarian's site in the past. So I actually found him through other drum websites and specifically through Aquarian. I remember Aquarian came out with a new site that he had developed and I was like, what? Who did this? I'm going to hire that guy. And we've been working together for about 6 years now. And then everything else is done by me. Like, I can shout right now and no one will answer because there's no one here. So I do I had to learn, like I said, I had to learn video editing and audio engineering and color correction for my videos and aspect ratios and all that stuff because I just didn't trust anyone else to do it.
Gotcha. At this stage of the game, with Mike'sLessons.com, where it's at right now, what is the biggest challenge to just keep it going, keep the ship sailing in the same direction?
Right. Yeah, I mean, the biggest challenge is the mental hurdle that an online student has to deal with as far as the growth. You know, they want to grow so fast. We're in this world of like, hey, your drum lesson was cool, but it was 3 minutes long. And I'm like, 3 minutes? That was a 3-minute condensed version of the 2-hour lesson I took on that subject. And they want it to be 30 seconds. So everybody not only wants the content to be as quick hitting as possible, but they also really want to grow as fast as possible. And it's like, I'm sorry, this instrument doesn't work that way. I've been explaining to my students lately, you know, they might say, hey, I've been on your intermediate hand speed course for almost 6 weeks. And I'm like, that was 2 years of my life, man. Like, if you got through it in 6 weeks, I'm going to feel really terrible. But they are accustomed to like, yeah, but I should be chipping away like every day. And it's like, well, I can do that. I can make lesson 1 be at 60 BPM and lesson 2 is at 65 BPM. So you feel like you got somewhere, but I really need you to learn how to just get better at this instrument. So I would say the biggest challenge right now is just making sure that everyone mentally is staying happy. And when you're part of the Mike's Lessons family, you're part of the Mike's Lessons family Facebook page, which is a closed page just to our students. And it's a place where I can then upload content speaking to them directly rather than to the public and say, hey guys, I'm with you. Vent your frustrations here. I know how difficult this instrument is. I've been struggling with it since I was 5, but we're all in this journey together. So just know that I'm your big brother and I've got your back, you know? So I would say that that's a little difficult. And then the other thing is just not overdeveloping the website. You know, you can get caught in the whole like, oh man, I went to this other educational website and they had a metronome that does polyrhythms. We got to develop that. And it's like, why? Who the hell can use that? Like, right. They got apps. They don't, but you can go down that rabbit hole and think, oh, and then we should have our own version of Craigslist. So we buy and sell gear from each other. And you start developing all these things that clutter up the site. And now people aren't learning how to play drums anymore. So it's really always keeping the focus of just, here is how to progress as fast as possible and retain that information without having a drum teacher in your house with you or at a studio with you.
Gotcha. Now, we've talked about all the tremendous success you have, but with every tremendous success, there's always these bumps in the road. If you don't mind divulging this, Mike, tell everybody, tell us like the biggest snafu that you've had there where it's like, that's it. I'm done. I see you guys later. I'm out of here.
Oh, man. I don't know if I've had it in the business side just because I've got the blinders on too much to even know the good and the bad. I mean, to give you some super, super personal information, I actually don't have any tie to the finances of Mike'sLessons.com because I did early on. And the better we did financially, the happier I was. And the worse we did, the sadder I was. So I think it's been like 6 years now. About 6 years ago, I told my wife, you're going to be in charge of all that. I need this tiny amount in my account on the 1st and again on the 15th. I'm a drummer. I'm used to being broke. So I get this little allowance on the 1st and a little allowance on the 15th. And then that means that every month on the 14th, when I swipe my card to get a green tea, I'm literally going, please go through, please go through, please go through. Yes, it went through.
Do you know how many people you just made happy? You just made a lot of people happy saying that.
Yeah, man. I go through because that's how I grew up. I grew up as a musician, so I'm just used to being broke. And really, if you transfer a ton of money into my account, I just see it as, well, that's how much I have to spend until I feel comfortable again. So let's just keep that money low. But the reason we did that was, no matter how the business is doing, it doesn't affect me personally. I'm not thinking, oh, we're selling a lot of those, and if we sell more of those, I'll get more money in my account, so let me make more chop videos. You know, it's without knowing how we're doing financially, I can then just focus on education and think what is best for education, what is best for the student, and go from there. So, I mean, I do know how much our business is growing on a percentage level. Mm-hmm. I have access to that information, but it's not something where well, if we sell 60 more videos today or 2 more all access passes, it goes into my checking account. So I don't really know what's going on with that. But as far as a time that I wanted to give up, I was in Seattle, and they do this thing called the what's it called? Woodstick. So it's like as many drummers as they can get to try to break a record, and they're all playing at the same time, like 500 drum sets all playing at the same time. Well, they invite in a bunch of professional drummers to be on stage to direct that. So it was myself, Thomas Lang, Tim Alexander from Primus, Todd Zuckerman. And it was a huge cast of just the studs of the industry. And then in my mind, little old me. So anyways, so I had some hang time with Thomas Lang the night before my clinic. And he said, hey, man, how come you never do solos? And at this time, I had never played a solo ever, like on stage. And I was doing clinics all the time, but I just taught. So I said, because I'm scared. I'd really rather not. Like, I'm sorry, but I've seen Dave DiCenzo solo. I've seen Weckl solo. Like, I can't compare to that. I'm not even in that world. I've seen Thomas Lang solo. And so he said, in his Austrian voice, he's like, tomorrow you will do a solo. And I was like, no, T Lang, I don't think I will. Anyways, by the end of the night, he convinced me. He's like, you're going to do a solo tomorrow. And I'm like, all right. And Thomas is such a stud that, like, whatever he says, you buy in. You're like, yeah, we should all do solos. Hell yeah, man. So I got out in front of the crowd and sat down on a kit, and Thomas is in the crowd, and Tim Alexander's in the crowd, who's like one of my idols from my childhood growing up. And I went to just rip this monster chop that was going to start this solo. And on the very first note, I caught the stick on the rack tom rim, and it just flew out of my hand straight at the crowd. And I didn't even have extra sticks. So first of all, the stick just flies out of my hand, and the whole thing just falls apart. And I'm like, oh my God. And then I realized I don't have extra sticks. So I had to ask the crowd to slowly pass the stick back up to the front of the stage for me. And so then it's like kind of making its way through the crowd until it finally makes its way back to me. And I just thought, yeah, if I could just go home, that'd be great. Like, it was like a Southwest want to get away moment. I'm like, oh God, I'm the worst drummer that's ever lived. And I think it was funny. I really thought this is the end of my career because everyone had their phones out. It's going to be all over YouTube. Instead, all that happened was people were like, dude, it's so cool to see that you're human. I'm like, what? Like, because I live with myself all day long. I live with myself dropping my sticks and missing every note. But I didn't realize that everybody had only seen my edited videos that I took the best take, and it was always flawless. I mean, as much as I can make it, but it was the best version of me. No one had ever seen the reality, which is I drop sticks, I rush grooves, I rush fills, I drag the crash. It's like, and then I'm all in my head about it. So I think if anything, it just kind of humanized me to the crowd. And then we actually ended up having a great clinic. But at that moment, I was like, yeah, I'm good. I'm out. There's no reason for me to play this instrument anymore.
So, Mike, I want to ask you and I don't want you to give away the company secrets or anything here on this. But if you could talk maybe in some fairly round numbers, since you started Mike'sLessons.com, how many students roughly have signed up?
Yeah, so I can just tell you that our email list is only made of people that have signed up for Mike's Lessons. And our email list is, roughly a little over 15,000. So, that obviously contains people that have signed up in the past and then aren't a member anymore. And it's not like the distant past. I try to keep my email list at about 2 years current. But the other thing I don't do is I don't collect emails. There's nowhere for you to put in your email address on Mike'sLessons.com until you're actually signing up. I don't want that like bait and switch, like, well, just enter your email and I'll give you a free lesson. It's like, if you're at my website and you're not ready to commit to your drumming and to pay for your education, you're not ready for my website, which is totally fine. Go on YouTube. There's my own free content is there, but I'm not going to capture your email address until we're about to engage in a partnership where I'm your educator and you're the student, and we are going to do everything we can together to make sure that you're getting better at this instrument. So I would say we have about 15,000 students that use different aspects of our website on a paid scale.
Gotcha. Now, on a percentage basis, and this might be a little bit of a tough question to get even a fairly accurate answer on, but then again, you might just rip it out instantly and you might go, oh, it's 57%. It's essentially this. You know how you talked about at the beginning that there was a serious temptation to post the candy, right? As
Yeah,
opposed to
sure.
as opposed to somebody saying, "Okay, I'm going to go look at a Flamacue video," right?
Right, yeah.
If you had a best guess, the students that come and look at your different videos, what percentage look for just the candy, and then what percentage are looking for something like, okay, here's the level system. I'm going to show you some real technique or something that would be a real basic that people should know.
I would say that 90% of our students are looking for the real stuff because they've been through the filters that I set up in the first place.
Gotcha.
The filters that I set up are, here's the candy on social media. Now, if this is what you're looking for, stay here. Don't even come to my website. Stay here. This is just candy. It's not going to make you a better musician. It's really not going to make you a better drummer, but it's fun, and I get it. That's one thing that drives me nuts about educators is when they say, you know, when they dog out chops and licks and cool stuff, it's like, okay, but you can do it. So how did you learn it? It's like, it was clearly important to you at some point. Why can't you take yourself back in time and remember that it's probably important for somebody else right now? So my thought is, if you see my candy, my licks and tricks and my crossover linear fills, and you dig that, like you really like that, like that's where you're at in this stage of the game. Maybe you'll come over to Mike's Lessons in 2 years when you go, yeah, I just played a gig and I wasn't able to use that once. And it's like, oh yeah, me either. That was just for YouTube. That stuff's fun, you know? That's me sitting on the drums and I'm bored and I come up with some silly lick. That's why it lives on YouTube and not on my website. My website is like, okay, are you ready to get serious? Let's do this. Now, in our courses, you know, we do have fill courses and improvisation courses and things that it's like, yeah, this is fun too, but I always want to make sure that I'm giving it a context of like, okay, we're now getting into the world of fusion fills. You know, if you can play Pat Boone, Debbie Boone in different places of the measure, you're pretty set for your pop gig cover band. But if you want to learn this crazy thing, this Vinnie Colaiutaism, well, now we're entering in the world of fusion. Please don't try this while playing like a Jackson Browne tune. So everything has its own context, but I would say once you make it to mikeslessons.com, if you've been filtered through the world of what's out there on YouTube and all that stuff, and you've been filtered through some of the other drum education sites that spend a lot of money on advertising, I'm well aware they're going to catch you first. But what I'm hoping is a year in, maybe 2 years in, you kind of go like, yeah, I need something deeper. I want to go deeper with this. This is surface level stuff, but I'm ready to go really deep and get into it. And then the other aspect is once you get there, then I hope that I'm giving you the freedom to know that I'm in favor of other online drum lesson websites and saying like, hey, you know, like my buddy JP Bouvet is one of the greatest drummers in the world, in my opinion. And he teaches how to be more like what he does on the drums, where it's like, well, hell, that's one thing that I could never teach. He's more JP than I'll ever be, so why don't you just learn from him? When people ask me like, hey, can you break down an Animals as Leaders tune? It's like, no, because Matt Garska's alive and he has it on his website. Like, why would you want to learn it from me when you can learn it from him? So that's kind of how I see all that stuff.
Gotcha. Mike, every video lesson is going to be a little bit different. You're going to, be teaching, say, a double stroke roll in one, and then, like you said, you might be teaching, a Vinnie Colaiuta lick in another. Just on average, when you post a 4 or 5 minute video like that, how much time do you take from conceptualizing it to, we'll call it choreographing it, getting it all planned out, to then sitting down in that studio, video recording it, and then uploading it to the site?
Now, maybe an hour would be from the moment I think of it until it's actually on YouTube, because the process is so fast. My studio it's never something where I have to go, okay, let me go get the cameras now. Like my studio is constantly set up. The lighting is actually in the ceiling. It's constantly set up. So it's literally however long it takes Pro Tools to open, because that's just a big program. It takes like 30 seconds for it to open. I press record on both cameras. I do 3 snare hits to get me my markers so I can align all the audio and stuff. And then I go, and honestly, not to be rude, but the way Steve Jordan plays a gig or plays time, because he's a master, because he's done it, this is all I do. So I don't have any nerves on camera. I never stumble through things. Maybe every once in a while I'll have to play something twice. I would say this though, to go back a little bit, when you said conceptualizing it, I would say that's probably a full day before I do anything. So I'll kind of say, oh, you know what? I've done a lot of triplet based stuff lately. Let's get some straight time things in there, and everything's been fill based. Let's make sure it's a groove. And then that day I'll come up with what I'm going to do, and I'll practice the hell out of it so that when I do press record,
Gotcha.
it's all one take.
Gotcha. Now, you mentioned also that you do still quite a few private lessons, right? Like one-on-one lessons. I know that some of them are online, but some of them are in person as well. Is that correct? Roughly, how many of those do you do on a weekly basis?
Not many at all. Like, that's just if somebody's coming through town and says, hey, I'd really like to get a lesson with Mike Johnston, they'll email us through the site, and then my wife will look at the schedule and say, okay, he can do this 1 hour session. Like, we just had a girl, Sarah Hope, who is from Texas. She's doing some stuff here in the Bay Area, or in the Bay Area, so she scheduled a 2 hour lesson. And so I don't have anybody on an actual schedule. And then what'll happen is, if I have some time that opens up where I have no clinics, no drum festivals, and all I'm doing is the online thing, then my wife has a group of Sacramento drummers that she'll send a group email to and says, okay, Mike's open for private lessons for this 3 week span. You can book one if you want. In all honesty, it's not my favorite way to teach. I love the in-person part, but I hate not being able to see somebody on a weekly basis and see their development. As somebody that's obsessed with education, I hate having to ask the question, so what did we work on last time? Because I haven't seen them in 6 months, so I don't remember. That drives me nuts. I mean, when I was a full-time private teacher, I loved when they walked in the room, I knew exactly what we did last time because I took notes, and they walked in the room and I said, all right, I remember we were working on permutating the flam of the flamadiddle over an ostinato. Let's get started. And letting them know, like, hey, I do remember seeing you last week, even though I've seen 70 people since then. I remember what we did. And that's kind of tough for me when I see somebody and it hasn't, it's been months, and I'm like, hey, so what did I tell you to do last time? It's not my favorite way to teach.
Mike, when you do see individual students and you compare them, especially over a period of time, like from when you first started teaching when you were 17 to where you're at right now, is there a particular trait or characteristic that you feel has changed or might be missing from students today? Is there something that just frustrates the crap out of you?
That's a really good question. Yeah, I mean, well, one, they have access to so much information that I feel like they're getting, D pluses or C minuses in 20,000 subjects, and they don't have an A in anything.
Yeah.
When I was taking private drum lessons, my only access to information was the teacher and whatever they passed on to me. Well, now I've got this person that's playing for 3 weeks, and they're saying, yeah, I got like this downloadable course from Danny Carey. And I'm like, did you just say Danny Carey? Bro, you can't even hold the sticks, which I'm okay with, but what are you doing trying to learn a Tool song, And there's no one in their way to stop them. I mean, I'm even trying now in my courses to say, before you start this course, do this with me. And if you can't do this with me, don't start this course. And because I want to make sure they know, like, hey, just because you can press the play button doesn't mean you're ready for this. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, but you can't just get too much information too fast. So I would say one thing that drives me nuts is the gear, not the gear, but the information hoarding. Like, I'm going to learn, I signed up for this and I signed up for this, and then I went to this drum camp, and I'm like, you need private drum lessons. That's it. This thing takes a while. Slow down. So that can drive me nuts. Other than that, no, man, it's pretty cool. I mean, I'm in a really lucky position where if anyone's taking lessons with me now, they've searched me out and they specifically want lessons from me. Where when I was younger and teaching, it was just like, hey, I came into the store and you're the drum teacher. And it was pretty much people saying, I got stuck with you. I'm like, okay, well, then now I have to build trust, and it's going to take a while. And you almost have to have like the lesson where you slightly establish dominance so you can be the teacher, where I can't stand that stuff. It's like, man, I don't want to trade chops with you to prove that I can be your teacher. So right now it's not too bad. I will say, though, I've seen a reduction in something that used to drive me nuts, which is people validating themselves through gear. And I remember having students come in and be like, the first thing they would tell me is like, I got a DW collector set. I'm like, that's great. Like, okay. And they're like, and a Roland TD 40 billion. And I'm like, okay, so you clearly have a decent job, but that doesn't tell me anything about your drumming. And I don't really see that as much anymore. I see people where it's almost the opposite. I'm like, dang, you can play, man. Like, what kind of kit do you have? And they're like, a Thomas Silver Star. I'm like, oh, that's like a $900 kit. And they're like, yeah, it's, and then they know about it. They're like, yeah, it's birch shells and it just sounds good. And I really don't have a reason to buy something else. And I'm like, that's awesome. Because I remember thinking, I'm pretty sure Dave Weckl would sound pretty good on a CB700. I don't think it's my kit that's the problem. It might be me. And so seeing that change has been cool. I really dig it.
Mike, with the just the brilliance and the convenience of having online lessons available to, say, some kid that's in the middle of like Laramie, Wyoming, right?
Right.
That is fantastic. But somewhere along the way, there's also you get a little bit of a conflict from the standpoint of like there are certain things that you miss that tactile
Absolutely.
sort, especially when you're talking about technique, that tactile touch, that having that teacher go, you know what, you need to look under for your fingers right here with where that stick lays. How can you how do you make up for that? Is there a way you can make up for that?
Yeah, I mean, that's been the constant goal of mine since day one is how do I close the gap between online teacher and online student? One of the ways is I don't close the gap and I keep my prices low enough that you can afford private lessons. That's really important. I want you to take my content to your private teacher, try it out and have them go, yeah, you clearly learned his little video thing, but you didn't work on the feel at all, and I want that to happen. The other way, if it is somebody that really doesn't have access to education, we, in the last year, launched our own student upload feature where we have our own servers. You're uploading the video to us, not to YouTube, not to Vimeo, and it's only viewable by the Mike's Lessons paid subscription base. And what happens is when you're uploading, you actually can check a box that says, I want Mike to review this, or you don't want me to review this. So some people are uploading content just because they want to keep themselves accountable. But a lot of people are saying, no, I want Mike to review this. And then on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, when we do our live broadcasts, that's when I say, okay, this is Steve's video from Wyoming, and he's working on the inverted paradiddle groove. We show the video, and then I break the whole thing down. And I actually tell our students, hey, I need the camera angles to be a certain way so that I can see your technique and do the best I can to close that gap. But I'm the first to admit there's no substitute for sitting in a room with a drum instructor. There never will be, and I don't want there to be. I want to be an enhancement to education and something that can help your private education. If anything, I want to be able to inspire you to keep going with your education. But I've never wanted to be someone that takes over and says, "Oh, you don't need to pay $100 a month. I got it covered." I want you to take private lessons, especially in the beginning. I mean, there is a time where right now I've been playing my whole life. I feel like I could take online drum lessons from whoever and be fine. But I sure as heck couldn't have done that in my first 2 years or wouldn't have wanted to, at least as the sole part of my education. So,
gotcha. I want to ask you a quick question about technique and about grip and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
That almost all of the videos that I've seen that you teach on, you're playing matched grip. Do you have any videos out there, or do you have students that say, Mike, I need this in a traditional grip thing?
That's a great question. Yeah, I think with the grip, my teachers were mostly traditional grip teachers, so it's kind of funny that I just never went that route. I grew up in school jazz band, where in school, and I'm not talking like combos, but in big band, we actually had to play traditional because you'd get docked points in your competitions if you didn't look the jazz part. So you wear your black and whites, you play in a traditional jazz or a traditional grip, and you do your thing. So I grew up kind of playing that way. But then as I started getting into heavier music and playing the rock stuff, I just wasn't able to hit hard enough. Now, the one thing I will say is you can hit as hard as you want in traditional grip because Todd Zuckerman is a beast. Stuart Copeland, the first time I saw him, hit a backbeat on Synchronicity Tour, I was just like, okay, well, clearly you can hit as hard as you want traditional grip. So I think what it comes down to is what are you most comfortable with? And when I watch my students, I just ask them, so why are you holding the stick that way? And if they have no answer for me, then I ask them, I think you should switch to matched. But if they say, I don't know, it just feels more comfortable, I feel more loose this way, and then I watch them play and it's like, yeah, man, you sound great, then I don't really change technique unless I see it getting in somebody's way. Mm-hmm. when I see it getting in somebody's, like, I would never tell my students, you have to play heel up. It's like, no, you have to play this bass drum part. However you get it done, I don't really care. I do drum camps with Mark Juliana, and that cat can play as fast as I've ever played, but he plays heel down, and he can play as loud as he wants, and he plays heel down. And I can feather at a up-tempo jazz tune. I can feather heel up as quiet as he can. So what it matters is that whatever you do, commit to it and just be great at it. I'm definitely in favor of whatever's most comfortable for the student.
Gotcha. Mike, I have a quick question I want to ask you also. Well, actually, it won't be quick. It'll take just a moment to explain, but it's something that I always like to ask teachers, because the double stroke roll is one of, I always tell students, if you're playing with hands, 99% of everything you're going to play is between singles and doubles. Sure. But yet, when you work, especially on a double stroke roll, your technique and your hands go through pretty much the full range of technique, from the time when you start where you're playing individual singles as doubles, right, on each hand, to the point to where you have to make the transition, right, to where you go from making, two individual strokes to one stroke and making and getting two bounces, right?
Right.
How do you teach a double stroke roll? How do you get students from those two individual strokes and then get them through the full range of technique?
Yeah, man, isn't that the bane of every teacher's existence?
It is, man. Mm-hmm.
Telling them and the plateaus that you have to tell them about, saying like, hey, look, you're going to hit 120 and then you're going to be there for like 3 months for no reason. And you'll get to 121 and then you drop to 118. So the one thing that I do is I make sure they understand the mechanics of my own double stroke roll. And I really want them to watch my hands and say, okay, look how tight my fingers are, just like you said, when I'm at 60 BPM. And then right around 90 BPM, you're going to notice that my grip starts to just kind of loosen up a little bit. And then right around 120, my fingers start to engage. And then it all of a sudden becomes 2 out of the 3 molar strokes. And I've got a down, which is released. And then I'm pulling it back with my fingers to get this tap. And I'm speeding that up. And so it's my big thing for them is what I call the desired result technique, which is here's the desired result. I rip a double stroke roll. Now, how you get there is up to you. So I'm going to expose you to all the techniques. So I let them know what's going on. I also let them know as soon as I see that baby bouncy bull crap where their pinkies are out, I just tell them, here's the deal. If you want me to write down a number next to the BPM, you better be able to do it on your legs, because your legs have no rebound. So, and then the other thing is I have them, hold the sticks towards the top where you actually just pull it towards your forearm, so you're holding the sticks at the tips and then you're doing double strokes that way. Because the thing that people don't realize, especially professional drummers, is they've developed these muscles that are not part of everyday life. So if you have somebody that's never played drums, those muscles, if you see a professional drummer do a double stroke roll, try to find a situation in life that recreates that motion, and you won't. There's no motion in life that uses those muscles in that exact way. So when I have them do those finger exercises, it's like, look, man, those muscles in your body are extremely atrophied. They've never been used before. So you can't tell a drummer that's been playing for 3 or 4 months, hey, use more fingers. They honestly can't use more fingers. So you have to build up their fingers so that 6 months from now, all of a sudden their fingers kick in and they go from that 120 to 160 in like 2 weeks. And it's like, well, you didn't get that much faster. You just finally accessed a much faster group of muscles that you've never used before.
Excellent, man. Great. Hey, just a quick side note for your students that are especially working on rudiments and technique. Do you have a preference? Do you like for them to play on snare drum or practice pad, or does it matter?
Ooh, that's a big thing that I think we could use a whole episode to discuss.
Okay, next week, Tuesday.
Yeah. Just going from a surface that doesn't really have volume to something like a snare. I mean, snares are insanely loud. And when I see students with these strokes that are like literally hitting their shoulders, and I'm like, do you have any idea what would happen if you did that on a snare? Everyone within a 2-mile radius would be deaf. And the other thing is, when they go to the drum set, the first thing they do is put in earplugs. And I'm like, have you ever even heard yourself play before? Like, it's so loud. So yeah, I like the pad. For me, the pad is for extremely focused practice when you can't be on a drum set. If you can be on a drum set, I want you on a drum set. If you can't be, then you need to be on a pad and you need to be very focused, and you should be staring at the stick heights and imagining what would that be like if you hit a snare. Like a lot of times when I'm having my camps, I'll see my students working on paradiddles and the sticks are just, I mean, it's like Tommy Lee stuff. And so I'll take my snare off of my drum set and they won't even see me. And I'll just kind of walk over to them without them looking. And then immediately I throw my snare underneath their hands and it's like a gunshot. And they freak out because they kind of have their eyes closed. And then I scare them with it and I go, that's how loud that would have been on a snare. Bring your sticks down. And they're like, oh man. I'm like, yeah. And I always go, I'm just going to take a guess. Do you have an electric kit at your house? And they go, yeah. And I go, yeah, you need to, if you have an electric kit, there's nothing wrong with that. You need to play that thing 70% of the time or about that with no headphones and don't turn the brain on. Only play it as a pad kit with no ear protection, because even then you can at least still hear the relative volume that you're hitting at that you can't hear when you put on those headphones, and every single note is flawless and perfect and mixed perfectly. So yeah, I think that that's a really big thing that we as drummers have to really, or drum instructors, we have to help people understand the difference between this flawless bouncy pad and then like, yeah, man, you sat in on a gig someday and a guy's got old school hydraulic heads with gaff tape on them and you're trying to rip your doubles on like a 16-inch floor tom. It's like, and then you go like, oh man, dude's kit sucks. And it's like, no, it's you, man. Like you need to be able to muscle out those doubles. And so, you gotta play what's in front of you. And I mean, you also have to know, like when I do that, if I sit in at like a little blues jam and the guy's kid is just dead as all hell, I know right away, like, let's stay away from the diddles on this one because they're just not going to work.
Mike, you're a master of the segue. You had no idea I was going here, but the next thing I was going to ask you is when did you do your first drum camps, and then what was sort of the impetus to do a drum camp?
Nice. Well, yeah. So what had happened? My first camp was 10 years ago. So the last camp we just did. Oh, I'm sorry. My first camp was 7 years ago. We do 10 camps per year, and we just finished our 70th drum camp here a couple weeks ago. But the way it started was I had a school that I had started. My wife and I opened our first business. It was called the Drum Lab. And people, as the YouTube thing was starting to grow, people were saying, can I fly in from Norway or from China and study with you? And I was like, well, yeah, but I got 80 students a week. I mean, I could put you on my weekly schedule, but I can't give you the time you deserve. And they would still do it. Like we had a guy named Danny from Norway come in. And he stayed here for 3 months, taking one lesson every 2 or 3 days with me. And he rented an apartment and he furnished the apartment all just to get drum lessons, And then this girl came from China and I taught her for a while. And then another guy came from Scotland, Sandro, and it was the same thing. He rented an apartment, and I just thought there's got to be a better way to do this. And Mike's Lessons, the business, was starting to blow up at the time. So we actually had enough finances to look and think, okay, could we take this from the spare bedroom of our house, sell our other business, to maybe another drum teacher in town, and then open a facility just for drum camps. So we looked around and we had a commercial real estate developer, and I said, hey, or agent, excuse me, and I said, I need it to be in the same parking lot as a hotel, because I'm going to fly people in from all over the world, and I need them to walk to the camp. And he takes me to this like dream location on the river in Folsom, California. It was just like silly how beautiful this place was. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. I probably didn't mention, but I'm a musician, so I don't have this kind of money. And I'm not I'm not who I was when I was 26, where I have a record deal musician. I'm a broke musician. So, and he's like, no, you don't understand. Our economy has completely fallen apart, and you honestly can afford this place. So we started working on a deal, and now we have this location, the Mike'sLessons.com facility that's in the parking lot with this gorgeous inn called the Lake Natoma Inn, and we're in Old Town Folsom, which is it's not really Folsom the city, but it's this old little gold rush. It looks like Disneyland. Like all of the buildings they still have the facade from the 1800s from the gold rush. And it's just one street called Sutter Street, and there is a local blacksmith, and you can go get your horseshoes dialed in. And I've always thought, like, I just got to go there one day with like one of my old metal snare drums and be like, dude, make this as ugly as possible, put it in your kiln, like just wreck this thing because I want something cool. But anyways, yeah, so we started then. And as far as why we did it, it was because I just knew there had to be a more efficient way to do what we were doing. And then the big deal for me was, okay, I've attended camp type settings before, and the one thing that sucks is there's 40 people there, and I didn't get to know the teacher at all. What if instead of doing one camp with 40 people, what if I did 10 camps per year with 8 people, and 8 people was like the magic number where I could get to know them, they got to know me, I could learn their family life, I could learn their job history. I mean, how can I teach you until I know what your day life is like? Once I know, okay, you're a chiropractor, you've got 3 kids, now I have certain expectations on you because I know what your life is like. Where if I don't know anything, I assume everybody's me. I assume they wake up and they just play drums all day long. And it's an incorrect assumption. So being able to have small groups like 8 people, it allows not only the campers to really bond with each other because they're a unit, but it allows me to bond with them as well.
Gotcha. So, Mike, on these camps, I know you do several of them a year. Do you have different levels, so to speak? In other words, do you have like a beginner and an intermediate? And then inside of each one of those, do you change themes, or is there like a set curriculum for each one of those?
That's a great question. Yeah, so our camps are intermediate and advanced. And my thought is this: if you're a beginning drummer, you shouldn't be spending that kind of money on a drum camp. You should be taking private drum lessons. So I want you to develop your skill, because a camp is a frustrating time the way we do it, because it's such a small group where you can't hide. You know, when you do a 40-person camp, the teacher's up there, they demonstrate everything, you kind of fake it on the pad, but there's never a time where they go, and let's have everyone come up and demo that. Well, in my camps, there's only 8 of you, so you better believe that everyone's going to get up on that drum set that they've seen on YouTube 1,000 times, and they're going to try this out, and I'm going to walk them through it and try to make it better. So yeah, so as far as our camps and the levels, we have intermediate and advanced. We've always done ladies camps, and even though all of our camps are co-ed, so anyone can sign up for any of our camps, we've always done one ladies camp per year because I grew up with a lot of female musicians just through being in orchestra and jazz band and stuff. And when I got into the rock world and they all went away, I was like, wait, what happened? I grew up always playing with every gender and every race and every religion, and now it's just like, oh, it's just dudes? Well, this isn't cool. And obviously we had bands that had females in it, but it wasn't equal anymore the way I was used to it. So what I wanted with the ladies camps was I wanted to have at least one camp a year that female drummers could look around the room and see nothing but other female drummers and be like, cool, so I'm not in this alone. The only reason I'm not doing a female camp this year, this will be the first year in 2018 that I'm not doing one, or a ladies only camp. One, I've noticed that by having women in the other camps are better. The guys are more well-behaved because there's a lady present, which honestly, I can only take so many days of dude time. You know, at some point I'm like, hey, can we just be civil humans again? And having female drummers helps that a little bit. The other thing is women generally only have one reason to play this instrument, and that's to play this instrument. Guys could have ulterior motives. I'm in a band, or I want to get chicks, or I want to be cool in school. If a female's playing this instrument, it's because they want to play it. So their level of dedication is inspiring to everyone around them, because all the guys are looking around going like, man, she just has it down. And I'm like, well, yeah, but it's not because of some random God-given talent. She has it down because she put the time into it. So why don't you take that as the influence and realize if you committed the exact same way she did, you'd have it down too. So, and then the third reason we're not doing a ladies camp this year is because we finally got to where I've always wanted to be. We have badass female drummers that are now famous, but not because they're female. They're famous because they're the best drummers in the world. And so I've talked to Annika Nilles. You know, we did a thing in Germany a few months back, and I said, hey, I'm not going to do my ladies camp this year. Would you be interested in taking it over? Because the one thing that's always bugged me about the ladies camp is I'm still a guy standing up there telling ladies they can do anything. Shouldn't it be the lady that did it telling them that? So I want Annika, Emmanuel Capoletta, I want all these great female drummers to take it over and be like, okay, now I think it's a great thing that we have kind of finally evened the playing field where we've got to where we need to be, which is either you can play or you can't. The last thing that should ever be on my mind should be your belief system, whether you're gay or straight, whether you're a guy or a girl, what color you are. If those things are on my mind about your playing, then something's wrong with me. I want to just judge your playing based off your playing.
Mike, your website, mikeslessons.com, is the proverbial machine. This thing, it just keeps on going and keeps on going. Why don't you tell our listeners, what is a typical day like in your life?
Well, it starts with my dogs waking me up and licking my palms. I have no idea what it's all about, but they're like, that's my alarm every day at about 6:45 in the morning. My dogs like nuzzle their way back onto the bed and they just lick my hands until I wake up. So that's how it starts. And then, I usually get to work, I'd say probably about 8:30 in the morning. And then if it's a live lesson day where we do our live broadcast lessons or streaming lessons, then I'm doing the PDFs for that. I'm downloading the student videos that I'm going to review. I'm kind of watching those. And pretty much everything is based around the live lesson until noon, which is when it happens, Pacific Standard Time. And then from that point on, it's just filming content and editing content. And then there's just days where I can't do any of that stuff, but it's still all drum based because maybe I'm doing an interview like this, or maybe I'm doing some educational content for a magazine in a different country. So there's just a lot. I would say I film videos every day. I teach live online every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And then I try at some point to squeeze in some practice because I have drum festivals and drum clinics coming up. And I want to get better at the drums. I mean, if I'm not a good example of drumming, then my business will fail. So I need to get better. And I was just looking today at the lineup for the UK drum show, and the 3 artists they've announced have been myself, Benny Greb, and Richard Spavin. And I'm just like, oh crap, I gotta practice. They're not terrible at the drums at all. And I don't know if you experienced this at all with your career, but I don't care to be as good or better than Benny Greb and Richard Spavin. I want to get off stage and not hate myself. I want to get off stage and be like, cool, that's the best that I could have played on this day at this moment. I prepared as much as I could. Now, because I know that, now I can sit front row and watch Benny Greb and be happy for him and be excited and soak it all in as a fan, instead of just sitting there watching him while I'm in my head about how bad I was. So that's where my obsession with practice and preparation comes from, is I just want to get off the stage and be proud of the 60 minutes I was up there for.
Man, it took a long time for me to get to that point. I mean, it took years and years and years. It's the type of thing that, I'm a self-admitted perfectionist, but I had to learn that I need to strive more for excellence and not perfection.
Yeah. And personal excellence. I mean,
yes,
that's the hardest thing, is to not compare yourself to other people. And and then that allows you to enjoy other people's drumming.
Absolutely.
Instead of comparing yourself to it. It's like, okay, well, that is what it is. And I've done so many clinics now with one of my favorite drummers in the world, Russ Miller, and I feel like every time we do something together, he gives me some big brother advice that just changes my life. And I like, one of the things that he really helped me with was realizing the one thing you can control is that no one will ever be as Mike Johnston as you are. So stop trying to be someone else and be more of that than you've ever been, and everybody will love it. You're on this festival with Dennis Chambers and Josh Dion and and all these greats for a reason. So if they would have wanted you to be Dennis Chambers, they wouldn't have asked Dennis Chambers to be on the festival. So go out there and be you, and everything will be great. And so things like that really help get me through that.
Man, I would be willing to bet you that the phrase "comparison is the thief of joy" has been on this show probably a dozen times.
Yeah, man.
Because it absolutely
I love that.
is.
Yeah, comparison. And then the other thing I would say, if you want the positive, is preparation equals relaxation. The more prepared you are, the more relaxed you'll be, because in your heart, like, I did everything I could do. So even if it's, a tenth, which anytime I play drums on a festival with Thomas Lang, it's maybe a 20th of what his left foot can do, but it's still the best that I can do, and I'm the most prepared that I could possibly be. So I'm fine with it. It's like, cool. Now I get to sit back and watch the fireworks,
Mike, getting back to your daily thing really quickly.
Yeah.
From knowing a little bit about you and listening to the MD podcast, I know that you're a health conscious guy. How do you fit that into your daily routine? And part two of that is, do you practice any type of meditation, journaling, mindfulness, anything like that?
Yeah. The healthy thing, I think, has just been built up over years. It's never something that I ever decided, okay, I'm going to be healthy. I mean, I think it was all vanity early on in my life. And because it was like, well, I'm in a rock band, so there's no way I'm playing this show with a shirt. But if I'm going to have to take my shirt off after the first song, I better be in decent shape. So, but that created a lifestyle in my 20s that's still with me today, where I honestly don't have to tell myself not to eat fried food or to not drink soda. I actually don't even like the taste of it. And once you've weaned yourself off that stuff, which I did in my 20s, it actually makes you quite physically ill to bring it back in, you know? So
Yeah.
I can't eat, if I eat French fries, like I'm going to have a rough 2 days coming up. So that part of it is just part of my lifestyle. As far as being somewhat fit, I mean, I go to the gym every day. It's either in the morning if I wake up early enough, or I go with my wife. We'll take like a high intensity interval training class together. But the one thing I will say to the listeners out there is I don't think that contributes to my drumming. I think that just contributes to my overall happiness, which in turn maybe makes its way into my drumming. But I've seen plenty of people that were completely out of what we would call good shape, but they were in way better drum shape than I'll ever be in.
Yeah.
You know, their fingers are 10 times faster. Their economy of, is that right? Their economics of motion or whatever. I mean, they're just flying around the kit, and I'm like, okay, well, clearly you don't have to be, you know, a triathlete to do this. So that, as far as squeezing it in, I mean, that's all part of it for sure. What was the second part of your question before I went all tangent?
Yeah. Do you practice any type of meditation, anything like that?
Recently, yeah. So I probably about 6 months ago, I started floating. So going into a float spa. And that, what I used to do before floating was I would always schedule like a trip to Los Angeles at least once a month for myself. And that drive is 7 hours long. And on that drive, my brain would hit this kind of, I don't know, zone where I could just think of great things. You know, it was almost like that space in between, right before you fall asleep. And I would just zone out and start thinking about ways to improve education or ways to improve my website. So a friend of mine said, hey, have you ever tried a sensory deprivation tank? Maybe you could get to that zone right away and not have to drive 7 hours. And so I gave it a try. We have a local float spa here in Folsom, and you close yourself inside this tank that's filled with Epsom salt water, and you float. The water is body temperature, so you don't feel the water on your skin at all. And you close the chamber, and it's pitch black and zero sound, and you have nothing. There's no light and there's no sound for 1 hour, and you just float, and there's no gravity. And I do that once a week at the minimum. And I usually go in there with a plan, and I'll say, okay, these are the things I need to solve. You know, maybe I need to create the content for the UK drum show. And the one thing that I love about those sensory deprivation tanks is there's no passage of time. You can't tell if it's been 10 minutes or 10 hours. So a thought that would normally take me a whole day to work through, like, what am I going to do for the UK drum show? I can get that done in 20 minutes in the float tank, because my brain's just firing off so fast. So, and I don't have to do anything to get in that zone. I don't have to drink a cup of coffee. I don't have to resort to other activities to, like, you know, that could get me arrested. So I just lay down in some salt water.
Awesome, man. Well, Mike, we're about to power down here, but I wanted to ask you, naturally, I know you want to talk about Mike's, and we have been talking about Mike'sLessons.com. But what else do you want to promote? Anything else you want to tell the folks?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that when it comes to my website, go there when you're ready. Like, I don't need you to go there right now. I actually would rather you search out what is out there. Find the other people. What you need to do is you need to find an educator that you click with. No matter who has the most expensive camera or the best microphones, none of that stuff matters. What matters is that you connect with the person that's delivering the information. If I get to be that person someday down the line, that's great. But I need that to happen very naturally over time for you, so that when you do make that commitment, I know you're in it for the long haul, and I can kind of say, okay, if you're committed, so am I, let's do this. As far as other things to promote, I would just say that I started my first band in the last 10 years. I was, after what happened in my band, I just thought I don't ever want to be in a band again. And then what had happened was, with all the YouTube stuff and all the teaching, I just thought, man, does my drumming have a musical home anymore? I've been so detached from music, and I've been pushing the drumming so far. I wonder if it has any use. And so I started a band, and it's called Man on the Moon, and it's a trio, and it's somewhere between heavy rock and fusion. It's kind of like if Chick Corea was pissed, I would say that's kind of what we sound like. But our goal is we're supposed to be, instead of us being the inspirational ones or whatever, we're not trying to dominate you with our music. We want to be the background music while you're thinking of what you're going to do next, while you're being inspired. We're just in the background doing our thing. And so we always refer to ourselves as, we are good driving music. You put us on, we fade off into the distance, and we're the soundtrack for your creativity, and we're the soundtrack for your thoughts. So yeah, so we just released our first EP. It's called Moore's Law, and the band is Man on the Moon, and you can check it out on iTunes or Spotify.
Awesome. Mike, you've been a tremendous guest, man. But
Thanks, buddy.
Let me say this.
But I can't stand you.
You don't get out of this scot-free.
Mm-hmm.
You said you listened to the show, which, let me tell you, I'm completely and totally flattered. Thank you very much, man. We appreciate you listening to the show. But you know what's coming next. You have to go through the gauntlet. You have to go through the proverbial maze at the end of The Shining, and it's otherwise known as the Drummer's Weekly Groovecast Rorschach Test. And so you know what's coming. Bring the heat. Bringing the heat. What it is it's our little version of 20 questions, little short answers that require minimal thought.
Lightning round.
So whenever you're ready, we shall start.
I'm ready.
Here we go. Question number 1. Gretsch Drums, USA customer, broadcaster.
Broadcaster.
What's your favorite method book?
Practical Applications by Kim Plainfield.
Do you rise with the sun or up at the crack of noon?
By the way, Practical Applications is by Chuck Silverman. I meant Advanced Concepts by Kim Plainfield. I rise with the sun.
You can't go back, man. You're ruining the groove here.
I said the wrong thing. I'm sorry. I can't. I'm an educator.
All right.
I feel like when I get to heaven, Chuck Silverman's going to punch me in the face.
All right, so we got Rise with the Sun. All right, moving on. Snare drums, wood or metal?
Metal.
Benny Greb or JoJo Mayer?
Benny Mayer. Benny Greb.
What's your favorite TV show right now?
Walking Dead.
Shot in Atlanta. Thank you very much.
Nice.
Pat Boone, Debbie Boone, or Face Melter?
Oh, Pat Boone, Debbie Boone.
Clear batterhead or coated batterhead?
Coated.
Sports, love them or hate them?
Love them.
Now we move into the rudimental section of our quiz. Double paradiddle or paradiddle diddle?
Paradiddle diddle.
Flam accent or Swiss triplet?
Swiss triplet.
Flam paradiddle or flammed mill?
Flammed mill.
Man, we're brothers. What's the most difficult rudiment for you to play?
Ooh, let's go with the book report. I wouldn't say it's the most difficult rudiment for me to play, but it's the most difficult rudiment for me to use.
Gotcha. You went hybrid on us, man.
I did.
Coffee or tea?
Tea.
You just landed your dream playing gig. Who's the first person you call?
Joe Arrington from the band A Lot Like Birds.
I'm going to make sure I tell Amber that. When you're playing live, do you like to play to a click or nothing?
Nothing.
PC or Mac?
PC.
Woo, man, me and you the only ones.
Yeah, baby.
What's your favorite hobby outside of music?
Oh, man. Floating in a float tank.
Good stuff. Text messages or phone calls?
Depends on the person. I'll go with text for now.
All right, $1 million question. There's a small room in your house. It's on fire. inside that room are all your cameras and all of your watches.
Oh, you bastard.
What do you run in and get? And don't say all the cameras, all the watches. You got one camera or one watch. What do you take?
I'm taking my Canon C100 with a 24 millimeter lens attached to it.
Congratulations, sir. You did not freeze to death like Jack Nicholson in The Maze.
Sweet chicken gumbo.
Mike Johnston, thank you so much, brother.
Man, that was a blast. Thank you for having me, and thanks for allowing me to talk about education. You know, I hope that all your listeners know that everything we talked about with education, it's not relative, or it doesn't have to live inside Mike'sLessons.com. That's just my avenue for doing it right now. I'm sure that someday it'll be back to books or some new future of education, but the most important thing for all of you guys out there is you find an educator that you can trust, that your private drum instructor, that he or she cares about you and your future, and they're not just teaching you what they taught the last person, and that most importantly, that you're staying inspired on this instrument. If this instrument turns into nothing but homework for you, you will quit. So find inspiration, take that inspiration, even if it's outside the drum world, and just enjoy it.
Tremendous, Mike. Man, like I said, it's been an absolute blast. I'm going to go ahead and say right now, without compunction, my favorite show ever.
Get out of town.
I say that.
Dog.
I say that on all of them, Mike. You know that.
I know. That's all right, but I'm taking it.
No, it's been an absolute blast. Say goodbye to the good folks of Groovecast Nation, Mike.
Everyone have a great day. Go practice.
Thanks, Mike. Bye-bye. Well, that was a good time, wasn't it? I had an absolute blast talking with Mike Johnston. What a good dude. What a great guy. What a smart guy. And what a good communicator and teacher. As he said in the podcast, feel free to drop him a line. Go over to Mike'sLessons.com. Check out what he's got to offer. Some great videos. The production is absolutely first class. And then also check out his new band, Man on the Moon, which you're actually listening to underneath my inane ramblings right now. And you also heard a little bit of that going into the podcast. So check out Mike and his group, Man on the Moon. Now, some of you heard it and remembered from the beginning of the show that we have a little contest that we're going to do. So here are the details. Once again, our buddy Chris Brady out at Aquarian Drumhead said, when you guys do this thing, you're going to give away some products on our dime. So here's the contest. We're going to have 2 winners. And the first prize winner of the contest is going to get 1 complete set of Aquarian batter heads of their choice. Now, let me say this. I want you guys to be tasteful. I know most of you are out there, but all I'm saying is this, is if you win this contest, don't go to Chris and go, yeah, man, I need to rehead my Terry Bozzio kit. It's only 49 batter heads. Let's try to keep this thing around 6 to 8 batter heads, okay? Because Chris is a good dude. He will hook you up with whatever you like, all right? And as always, let me go ahead and throw this caveat out there as well. Our contest is eligible to folks in the United States and Canada. Okay, so sorry, listeners in Malaysia. All right, second prize is an entire set of Aquarian drum kit tools. That's the T-tabs, the kick patch, the snare strips, and the Dura dots. And if you power listeners recall, the kick patch was my gear choice of the week several episodes ago. Chris and Roy out at Aquarian really came up with a home run on this. These are just these little goodies that every drummer needs from time to time. You can just take them and throw them in your trap case, and they're there for you when you need them. So, as always, you can go to aquariandrumheads.com, and you can check out the full range of drum heads that they have to offer, so you can start picking out the heads that you want Chris to send you, and you can also check out all those drum kit tools. All right, now you're asking, how do I win this sucker? Here's how you win these suckers. You head on over to iTunes, to the Drummers Weekly Groovecast homepage inside of iTunes. There you can see all of our shows. You can see the descriptions. You can just read a little bit about the show in general. And then what you need to do is get in there and leave us a 5-star written review. That's it. That's all you have to do. Get in there and leave us a review, and you will be automatically entered into the contest. We are going to do our drawing sometime, I'm going to say in the first half of December. We'll narrow that down, but we're going to give you guys about a month to get in there and get some reviews left for us so you can be eligible to win one of these wonderful prizes. So again, just go over to iTunes, Drummers Weekly Groovecast page inside of iTunes. Leave us a short written review. Has to be written so we can have your name in there to draw it. And then you will be eligible to win one of the great prizes from our buddies over at Aquarian. All right. We love hearing from you guys as well. Please reach out to us. You can always email us. We're at drummersweeklygroovecast@gmail.com. You can interact with us on social media. We have a Facebook page, facebook.com/drummersweeklygroovecast. And if you're a guy or gal who likes to tweet in 140, or if you're lucky, 280 characters, you can tweet us at Twitter. We are at DWGroovecast. I think that's going to do it this week. So on behalf of John Chalden and Mike Johnston, this is Phil. We will see you next Monday with a brand new episode of the Drummers Weekly Groovecast. Bye-bye.